I think oftentimes people that are, new to the workforce, they're thinking I have to work my dream job or the job that I think is my dream job off the rip. When I look back on my career experience, I think the most powerful experience and really where my foundation came from was just kind of literally being in the room for different things that were happening and learning that way. You were in the room and you were also in the private jet, which is pretty cool too.
Yeah,
So that's incredible. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of America's favorite podcast, the world's favorite podcast. No, I kid, but we are small and mighty. What Works podcast. I'm back with an amazing guest today in Philip Kean. Which Philip, we played the Small World game. We had the kind of the boarding school connection. You went to Lawrenceville, if I'm not
Lawrenceville.
mistaken. That's right, and then we've got
Yeah.
some shared connections. So shout out to anybody who's listening to this that went to Lawrenceville with Philip. And then also, I think we have some wonderful crossover. I went to Deerfield Academy, boarding schools. It's a lot like Hogwarts, right? We're all connected in that way. But I am thrilled to welcome Philip. I have been getting to know Philip and his firm, Lanegate Advisory, through our work here at Higher Frame. We work with a number of fractional executives, and Philip has a tremendous business. Rather than me sort of bastardizing it and trying to explain it myself, I will ask you, Philip, would you mind sharing a little bit about, just what is Lanegate Advisory? What do you guys do and who do you do it for?
Sure. Yeah. Lanegate Advisory does two primary things. We do traditional fractional. I say traditional. I guess fractional CFOs have only been around for like 3 years, so not that traditional. But we do traditional
Traditional enough.
traditional enough fractional CFO services, primarily in the tech sector, a little bit media, entertainment, prop tech as well. And we also do something called treasury as a service, which is cash management, FX execution, everything that you'd expect to see in a large organization in terms of a treasury function, we bring to smaller companies who've raised VC capital, might have FX needs, and are being kind of underserviced by their incumbent banking partners. And yeah, we've been doing it for about 2 years. It's been really exciting. Lots of different companies doing different things and lots of varied engagements, which always keeps things interesting.
Very cool. And yeah, 2 years in, especially, they say the same thing for startup time, right? 2 years in is effectively a lifetime. So congratulations on making it 2 years. A lot of people only make it a few months. I want to put a pin in, you mentioned sort of providing these treasury and cash management services to startups, which is effectively kind of a little bit of an underserved market. I want to get back to that. So we will get back to that. But before we jump into that, I am just curious how the heck you got started in this. Where did your experience come from in sort of, banking, I guess, specifically?
Sure, by accident. Um, so I studied history, went to a bit of a party school, College of Charleston. So
Oh, that's
studying
right.
is
Yes.
giving saying I studied history is probably a little generous.
The history of beer.
That's right. Um, But, after graduation, I moved to New York. I'm from New Jersey, so I did as everyone else from New Jersey does and moved to the city. Worked in commercial real estate for a few years. This was in the heady times of 2005, when I started, and, then the world kind of ended in 2006, 2007, 2008, and I was just a little bored not having that much to do in the real estate space and hopped on a plane to Abu Dhabi, Dubai, actually, originally, to work in private equity real estate. Lehman happened like 2 weeks after I landed. So
Crazy.
Dubai was kind of dead almost overnight. Ended up at a company in Abu Dhabi doing similar kind of real estate, institutional real estate kind of work. And then one day the treasurer was let go. They were a quasi sovereign entity, so a high credit rated entity, and they needed to raise around $1.5 billion in bond financing from international institutional investors. And they kind of just pointed at me and told me to do it. And I still don't really know why, but in the Middle East, that's kind of how things work, right?
Really?
Yeah, yeah, it's a very interesting environment. If you're capable, they kind of just throw things at you. and that's one of the things they threw at me. So,
Just a casual 1 billion, 1.5 billion. Hey, here, you do this.
sure, that's basically exactly what happened. I didn't even know what a balance
Remarkable.
sheet was. I had never worked with banks. I was in like in a finance adjacent field and commercial real estate, but really not. And yeah, I mean, for a few weeks, I didn't really sleep. I was just living and breathing loan documents and digesting Investopedia like it was breakfast, lunch, and dinner because I didn't know what anything meant. And luckily, had some really good attorneys to lean on as well. Couple weeks after that, we had docs, and I was, flying private with the sheikh across the US and Europe, doing road shows with insurers and bankers, and I've been in finance ever since. So a bit of a roundabout way to do it. Definitely didn't have a plan, but I do find if you just take risks with your life and your decisions, as long as they're calculated, you can, often be presented with cool opportunities like that.
And that is a cool opportunity. It's funny, I am mentoring someone right now. They're a college junior. They're entering I think their senior year next year. And they were asking me for advice because they're trying to get an internship right now. And it's funny because I found myself using the expression a lot. You just want to be in the room, is what I always say. It's like, I think oftentimes people that are, new to the workforce, they're thinking I have to work my dream job or the job that I think is my dream job off the rip. When I look back on my career experience, I think the most powerful experience and really where my foundation came from was just kind of literally being in the room for different things that were happening and learning that way. You were in the room and you were also in the private jet, which is pretty cool too.
Yeah,
So that's incredible experience. I'm curious. I was going to back up for a second because I worked in commercial real estate too. What aspect of commercial real estate were you in?
I worked for a company called Massey Knackle Realty, run by this guy, Bob Knackle, who's kind of a real estate influencer on LinkedIn now. And was subsequently purchased by Cushman Wakefield.
Okay, sure, yes,
I did building sales in New York City, specifically in North Brooklyn. So Williamsburg, I'm sure you know of, is like a very hip neighborhood. That was like the territory I covered. It was up and coming, but it had
yeah,
already kind of arrived by
sure,
2005. So I was selling like multifamily, mixed use, industrial buildings to investors. Mostly what I was selling and valuing were ground up development sites. If you go to Williamsburg now, it's all condos and new construction. That wasn't the case then. It was kind of old warehouses and ramshackle multifamilies that have, since been redeveloped. So yeah, I mean, that was great. It put me in a shape as well, having really enjoyed myself in university. I had a boss who was very demanding, but who I also got along with really well. It's just, I got a lot of really good habits doing that.
I'm connecting the dots here because now it makes a lot of sense. I too worked in commercial real estate when I first graduated. Had a degree that was very different from what I ended up doing. I guess the most relevant point was that in within my school there was a planning and development part of it, so kind of like urban planning. But I sold industrial in Northeast Philadelphia, and yeah, I just remember kind of like you know getting like almost like a little bit like an MBA on the streets in terms of a lot of the stuff related to like finance and numbers that I did none of that in college. I too studied the history of beer in college and the value and importance of people that are willing to take the time to explain things to you. I just think that's huge. And now it all makes sense how you're able to take that opportunity in Abu Dhabi. Okay, so circling back, you got this great experience and you really started to sounds like get a familiarity with banking. And so with LaneGate right now, you're serving startups, and you mentioned you're serving somewhat of like they're almost an underserved market in terms of banking. What is it that is sort of happening with startups in that regard? How are banks not serving them, and where are you filling the gaps?
It's kind of twofold. So it's banks not really serving them, but it's also, companies in the tech sector and, financial people working for those companies that don't really know how to identify the banks are underserving them. So there's lots of opportunities It can be as simple as, let's say I'm XYZ Incorporated and I just raised a $30 million, Series A round. And one of my investors is, strongly suggested I open an account with JP Morgan. This is like one anecdote that I see a
Right.
million times a day. JP Morgan doesn't really have a really great, tech coverage group at all. They don't have good relationship managers. They'll kind of stick you with someone who's been out of college for 2 years.
Yes.
They'll give you a bad money market product with high fees and only options to kind of use one of them. They're kind of online portals from the Stone Ages and doesn't integrate well with, like, modern
Yeah,
tech.
totally.
Let's say you also have, like, a need to purchase foreign currency because you have a subsidiary in, Estonia where your R&D team sits or something like that. Like, when you're buying it, JP Morgan's not gonna tell you, you can just get access to our spot FX currency desk and book trades at market. They're gonna say, just set up a wire to your Estonian entity and you can do that every month you need to make payroll. But what they don't tell you is like they're charging 3% on every transaction that goes cross border. They won't tell you that you're under earning by 20 basis points versus other almost identical risk free overnight instruments. They won't tell you that if you need to borrow money in 2 years, they have no balance sheet for a company in your sector. And you won't know any of those things because if you're in tech, chances are you've never worked in a cash management or treasury capacity.
No.
You've worked in
Yeah.
financial planning and analysis, or you've worked in controllership, which is all really important,
Mhm.
particularly FP&A for a startup.
Yep.
But you could be leaving a lot of money on the table. As an example, I was the treasurer of UiPath, huge company, is public, went public in 2021. They hired me not by mistake, but they had a CFO who was kind of not super experienced and had advice that they should hire a treasury person. If I had a kind of a US based CFO who'd come from that traditional FP&A background, they would have been in the mindset that you don't need any treasury help until you're a public company. But what I was able to do in like 2 weeks is find $600,000 in annual savings on FX
Wow.
trades,
Yeah.
reallocate their cash so that they got an incremental $1 million a year in risk-free interest and like
Mhm.
20 other things, just because that's something I know how to do. And yeah, we take that to, tech companies all over the world right now. And there's like 20 other things I could list that are just ways that you could really just low hanging fruit to add a lot of like tangible value.
Found money.
Yep.
Incredible. And I get all of that because I'll just say as a startup, founder, can I take it one step further with a JP Morgan or some, similar ilk is I just don't think they care. It's just you're just such a small part of their business that it's reflected in no knock on the many great people I'm sure that work at those businesses, but it's
Sure.
very clear that so many of them, you described it perfectly. They're like 1 or 2 years out of college. They're still learning, so much. And so they have, names like they have roles that are like advisor, manager, whatever, and they can't really advise you on anything. And that's not a knock on them. Their company is sometimes so big they can't really do anything. I will actually circle back on that. You mentioned that their VCs are telling them to set up that account. Is it because of stability? Is it because of the Silicon Valley
Yeah.
bank
It's a
fiasco?
gu
That's
it's a
why.
definitely a reactionary measure from what
Yes.
happened with SVB,
Okay.
but there are other banks with the same credit rating that JP Morgan has. So, basically what they're saying is, like, move your funds to, a higher credit institution where you're not at risk for, like, a run on the bank. So, sure, like, JP Morgan ticks those boxes, but so does HSBC, so does, Fifth Third Bank. There are a lot of single A credit banks that are much better positioned to help you as a startup. And what some of the silver lining about what happened with SVB is there's this huge SVB diaspora at a handful of like 3 or 4 banks where really great relationship people have gone and kind of made their own imprint on these kind of older institutions. That didn't really happen at JP Morgan. It did. A lot of them have left. And I just think that like the ticket values of these deals are just too small for them to have, given it the attention that they should have. But you've got like an HSBC has got 75 plus people from SVB and all really great people who understand the credit of a startup. They also have really good money market products. They've got a balance sheet for venture debt. They've got an international footprint. So it's not to say that if you're a startup, moving your money to HSBC is going to solve all your problems, because you're still going to be leaving money on the table if you don't really know what you're doing. But it's certainly a step in the right direction. But yeah, at the end of the day, you should be diversifying like where you keep your cash. There's some really cool tools. Most of them are free. It's just about like knowing how to find them and leveraging them to the best of your ability.
The knowing how to find, I think I can't emphasize that enough. As a founder who's dealt with a lot of these issues, I think that you know, this would be my infomercial for your business. I think that this information is relatively hard to find, hard to make sense of. And having someone like yourself who has, I'm sure, relationships, firsthand working knowledge with a lot of these groups, and then also you're aware of the tools, that's half the battle right there. I will ask, so you have some really cool kind of points here in terms of your personal experience. I'm picturing you in private jets with sheikhs. I'm picturing you with the CFO of UiPath as you guys are looking to, go public. And then now I'm also seeing you. You mentioned Estonia, so I assume you're working with a lot of, startups of varying sizes, and they have entities and people and all over the world and everything like that. What is a lesson that you've learned working with all these different types of personalities, success, so kind of like levels, size of business, et cetera, egos. What have you learned in terms of working with these folks?
Yeah, just don't be afraid of anyone. Try to be an open book whenever possible. Try to be really amenable. I think no matter who you're talking to, if you can employ like kindness, humor, and empathy in those conversations, it's very disarming to them.
Totally.
And
Hmm.
you're going to be able to, accomplish whatever you set out to accomplish in the first place. But if you're in Romania or Estonia or New York, like you're all just people. So just, try to work with one another, try to, structure your engagements so that you can work efficiently with one another, and don't keep it all to business, right? Like, get to know who you're working with, even if they're 2 levels above you or 5 levels below you. Be a human being, If you're smart and you know what you're doing, then you'll get good results. But just be like a kind, empathetic person throughout the process, and people will really take to that.
Makes complete sense, and I will say I'm smiling because I know a little bit about you. I feel like this doesn't just stop with Lanegate and your clients. You're invested in the local community, and I'm sure you kind of bring this. You're a firefighter. Is your hat? What was your hat say? Is it a
It is, yeah.
firefighter?
Cold
Okay,
Spring
cool.
Fire Company number 1.
There you go. So you're
Yep,
you're an active firefighter in your local department.
correct.
Amazing. And how do you find where does the connections also between your lane gate life and that and what you've learned? How do you apply that to a totally different place?
Sure. I'm a firefighter. I'm also their treasurer. So
There you go.
I have taken a lot of my own lessons that I've learned to that voluntary role. I shouldn't say voluntary. I was kind of voluntold to take that role by my chief.
If you I imagine there's not a lot of Philip Keans that walk into a house.
No,
So I would, if I was your chief, I'd be like, yeah, buddy, you're gonna do this because we have to have you do that.
sure, sure. So yeah, I mean, any tool that I use, especially free tools in my clients, not just on the treasury side, but on the fractional CFO side as well. I immediately on week 1 started using those in the fire company. Like Ramp is a great one. I'm sure most of your listeners use Ramp or have used Ramp in the past.
We're ramp users, so yes.
I'm also on the board of my local library. I manage their endowment. And anytime I look under the hood of any of these like small and local businesses or municipal kind of services or whatever, they're doing business like circa 1996. Everything's like on paper checks. The accounting is all wrong. it's everything is in person. It's really, really antiquated. They're banking with local credit unions who have effectively like junk status from a credit perspective, which right now, like in today's, you know, insane market is not really where you want to be keeping your cash because it might not be there in a few months.
Yikes! 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 Yikes!
So yeah, I mean, I take what I've done on a macro level down to the local level, right? So it's like killing all paper transactions when possible, getting them safer and higher yield investments in treasuries versus like the Hudson Valley Credit Union 2 month certificate of deposit.
No knock
And
on them.
pulling
Good people, the Hudson Valley credit unions,
that's right.
but
They're
just
are very
not gonna
lovely
get you the
people.
yield that you're looking for.
Yeah, they'll get you the yield. It's the risk that,
Yeah,
it's the
it
credit
comes with.
exposure, that you need to worry about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even just like processing invoices, you name it. Like everything can just be automated, and none of these small local groups know how to do that. It's probably, if you like take it at a national stage, multi-billion dollar opportunity. I'm sure someone will figure it out at some point, but it's nice to be able to help them, at least, one group at a time, because no one in a fire department wants to be spending 10 hours a week processing invoices and booking transactions in QuickBooks. You wanna be out helping people and doing drills and all of that.
Yeah, and as a taxpayer, I would hope they wouldn't be doing that stuff, right? So
Sure.
anything that keeps them out of the literally out of the books and out there in the world helping people, that's what I would want to support. I'm curious, how do you think this is probably a hard departure, but you mentioned billion-dollar opportunity, right? And when we talk about massive opportunities right now in anything, it's AI, 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 AI. How do you think about AI as it pertains to, I guess, your business? And more largely, where do you see the opportunities in AI for, I guess, finance, cash management, treasury, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, the opportunities are endless. You've got a lot of tools right now which have a lot of AI embedded in them, which will I've got 2 off the top of my head that are gonna be total game changers that I'm already using fairly regularly. The way I think about it is obviously automating all of the annoying back and mid-officey things that you need to think about and worry about and get done in a finance function just to keep the lights on and to keep people getting paid. And then 2, it's around, analytics and, getting answers from your data quickly without spending, a million hours trying to figure it out or asking someone to figure it out for you. So there's a lot of really smart products. Rillet is a new ERP, which I'm kind of obsessed with right now. Rillet, and it is like a QuickBooks, not only QuickBooks, it's a QuickBooks and NetSuite killer. It's gonna like you
Interesting.
could start out with Rillet and take it through to a public company, I think, even if you start with a platform and at Series A or earlier.
I have not heard of this. I'll check them out, but that's so cool.
It's great. It automates a lot of your SaaS reporting directly out of your financials. It's got like embedded project management functionality that will first like it's smart enough through its AI to auto code like the bulk of your transactions. And then it'll project manage like the close process for you
Hmm.
so that it's instead of like closing after 10, 15, 20 days, you can do a 50-minute exercise once a week and be closed pretty consistently inside of the first business day of every month.
Wow.
Um, and if you want to ask it questions, you can ask it questions and it'll give you typically really good answers about your numbers.
So cool.
It's really cool. It integrates with like all the other platforms that you typically see in the tech stack for a tech company with a finance organization. So it's tools like that. Tabs is another one. Tabs is a like a RevRec and revenue and cash forecasting and accounts receivable automation platform. These are all things that give finance people headaches, and they're also things that finance people don't want to be doing. They're smart enough to do a lot of it for you. So I'm just excited about anything that eliminates something I hate doing. I get really, really excited about.
Yeah, I can see the smile on your face, and I'm nodding too. It makes complete sense in what you're mentioning because that's pretty much all of our customers is we're staffing resources that are taking a lot of those headaches. And for the conversation around AI and my business is people ask all the time, are you nervous that some of these roles you're staffing are going to go away? It's not even a question of if they will go away. It's when. They will certainly go away. But the opportunity that I see is we're all going to be, hopefully, if AI does what it's supposed to do, we're all going to have a lot more time, I think, to tackle things. And then the question becomes, what can we do with that time when we're freed up? And that's I see the same opportunity. My focus is really on, uh, we're entirely focused on the human part of the sort of the cycle, right? And if there's a world where no humans are needed, guess what? It's not just higher frame that's in trouble. It's all of us, probably, unless there's going to be some sort of magical government stipend we're all going to receive where we don't have to work. But, the way that I see it is that my focus is really on, I think that there's a tremendous opportunity also with AI to really level up people and sort of take away some of the gap. So whereas people really would be like, oh, I'd never staff this position outside of the United States, I think that's going to become that's going to erode over time because there's going to be so much available in terms of what you talked about, the ability to ask questions, analysis, and all that sort of stuff. I just think there'll be a leveling of the playing field where the way in which we build companies will become a truly global thing versus just a local thing. So anyway, that's my little soapbox on
I
AI, but it's
couldn't
going to
agree
be
more, and
interesting.
it's also, by the way, like, a story that's repeated itself, like, since
It's
way
not the
before the
first
Ludd
time.
even before the
Yes.
Luddites, it was happening.
Yeah, totally. Yes.
People always find a way to elevate themselves, with new technology coming on board, and I totally agree with, like, the global organization thing as well. I mean, I was fortunate to live overseas for 8 years. I've worked for companies with huge global footprints. There are really good people all over the place.
All over the place. And a lot of similarities between all of us.
And as long as you treat them like good people, which they are, and unfortunately not everyone out of the US will do that, you'll realize that you can get just as good of a product and outcome from them, if not better, than 3x more expensive individual here. Yeah, there's just a big soup of smart people on a global stage, and it gets more developed in terms of how they can work with each other successfully with every day that passes.
Without a doubt. And I think you're totally right when you say it, people always find a way. I just think that what we're in the midst of is we're in the midst of a transformation, a change. We're all reinventing ourselves. I think it's just you have to think differently. It's no longer anybody who, is in the workforce here, at least in the US, I'll say, and you're doing a job that really is kind of you would describe as like mindless. You really probably should think long and hard about what it is you want to do in the future. How are you going to kind of reinvent yourself because that work is definitely going to change dramatically. I do want to kind of close things out with a couple things. I want to first give you the opportunity to do I always call it like an infomercial. If somebody is out there listening, and we do have for Higher Frame, we work with a number of startups, so I'm happy to pass along your information to all those folks. But if anybody is listening and they're considering, why should I work with Philip and Lanegate? What is a kind of a quick little elevator pitch for your business?
Sure. So this is the "but wait, there's more" pitch.
That's right. But wait, there's
But wait,
more. Yeah,
there's
exactly.
more. Yeah, I think I bring a lot of really good experience to the table, obviously. There are a lot of fractional CFO firms out there. There are not a lot of people doing treasury as a service out there, so you kind of have to bifurcate my little infomercial here. From a treasury management perspective, if you're sitting on a bunch of cash or you have needs in foreign currency, the value prop is pretty simple. If you want to make a bunch of free money without taking on any risk, probably even reducing your risk, that's a pretty achievable outcome in 85% of the companies that I talk to. And it's something that I can quantify inside of 20 minutes in real dollar terms. Those are the really fun conversations to have because do you want $200,000 that you didn't think you were going to get this year? Give me a couple of weeks and I'll get that set up for you. From the fractional CFO side, yeah, I mean, we've got bandwidth for more customers. It's me. I've got a couple of former UiPathers working with me as well on that. Collectively, we have 40 years of experience in startup finance. We've raised 5 billion plus in equity capital, 5 billion plus in debt capital, and we've got a really cool productized approach to FP&A, which means our clients get a really great financial product, which is inclusive of world-class reporting, an awesome kind of budgeting tool, and then access to people who've kind of seen it all. Everything from like pre-seed to post IPO companies across multi-sectors. We can add a lot of strategic value, and we do. You could just have to talk to one of our existing customers to confirm that, which they're all very happy to do.
Amazing. And I would say this, I've spoken now to a lot of fractional CFOs, and I could say that your offering truly is different for those two reasons. It's the treasury and the cash management piece, which honestly I just haven't heard people talk about. And I will just say, as a founder who's worked with one of those big banks, I will cut this infomercial for you. If you are a founder out there and you are working with one of these giant banks, guess what, buddy? They don't really probably care about you. And there's probably some really easy ways that you can get just honestly better service and better outcomes with Philip. So you should definitely hit him up. And then I love the mention about the productized approach. When I talk to fractional CFOs, this is my criticism for kind of anybody who's basically a consultant, an advisor. It's very tempting to, I think, fall into a hole of being just so generalized and vague that it's kind of like we help anyone who needs anything. And I really like the fact that you've really narrowed it down to some tangible things that they're going to get from you. You mentioned the budgeting tool, you mentioned the reporting, and then access to people that have experienced a lot. So, huge plug for LaneGate. Last thing I'll ask here is that, you've got a couple things, right? You've got LaneGate, you're a firefighter, you're helping out some local businesses. What do you want people to reach out to you for, and where can they find you?
Yeah, they can find me through my website, which is lanegateadvisory.com. They can email me at Philip with one L at lanegateadvisory.com. And yeah, look, if they're interested in talking to someone about helping on the cash management front or fractional CFO front, obviously they can reach out to me. I like to have many hats at all times on my head, and even if they just have some interesting thoughts about what's going on in finance or the tech sector, always encourage people to reach out to me just to have a chat. Things are changing so fast. I find most things that are new and game changing just to be really interesting to discuss and to kind of dive into. Finance people aren't famous for being people.
Sure.
Um, I'm probably a little bit different in that regard. Like, I just love talking to
Not
people
probably.
because
You are. Yeah, definitely.
yeah. So I just like, you can learn something from any conversation with anyone. Not anyone, but most people. So just, love to be connected, in general to people in the space.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier humor and kindness. I don't know if I would think of those things with most finance folks. Not a knock on them. I just feel like a lot of times they're just so singularly focused and dry that humor and kindness is definitely not something that comes across. If you are someone that enjoys working with people like that, Philip would be awesome. Thank you so much for coming on to What Worked. I really enjoyed the conversation. And I hope anyone out there who's listening, please do reach out to Philip. He's down, sounds like always, at least for a conversation, and then you can go from there.
Thanks, Tyler.
You got it.